Welcome to XStore's Point of Service Reporting Framework session. This session is intended to provide an overview of XStore's reporting framework, specifically how the framework's configuration files define all aspects of an XStore report. The XStore reporting framework combines the configurable flexibility for which XStore is known with the power of Oracle BI Publisher to design and render reports. Over the course of this session, we'll introduce the reporting framework and examine the configuration files that enable reports to be generated by XStore. Finally, we will look at how report configuration files can be used to overlay existing XStore base reports with customized changes. The generation and rendering of an XStore report at runtime involves a number of components and configuration files. The diagram in this slide illustrates the major interactions between the report framework's components and configuration files. Reports are defined in XStore with a spring bean, known as a report definition. At runtime, the report framework retrieves a report definition by name. Report definitions are composed of two very important configuration files, XDT data templates and RTF layout templates. The reporting framework's data generation component uses information from an XDT data template to retrieve sets of information from data sources, which are then written into an XML dataset. This XML dataset contains the raw content for a report. The visual formatting for a report is defined in an RTF layout template. RTF layout templates are designed using Oracle BI Publisher Desktop and Microsoft Word. The report framework's rendering component uses both the RTF layout template and the generated XML dataset to produce the report output displayed in XStore. Let's take a closer look at what happens during the rendering of a report. As mentioned in the previous slide, XStore's reporting framework leverages Oracle BI Publisher technology in the designing of reports. BI Publisher technology is also used to render report output. In this diagram, the RTF processor and FO engine are software components provided by BI Publisher libraries included in XStore. Let's take a look at how an XML dataset and an RTF layout template are inputs into a process that outputs the report we see in the XStore application. This chart reiterates that an XDT data template is used by the dataset generator to produce an XML data set. We saw this process in the previous slide. What we haven't discussed is how RTF layout templates are processed by BI Publisher's RTF processor into an XSL-FO layout template. XSL-FO, which stands for XSL Formatting Objects, is a powerful markup language used for XML document formatting. The XSL-FO language is not generally considered user-friendly. Fortunately, the RTF processor makes it possible to design reports in Microsoft Word instead of coding reports in complicated XSL-FO syntax. In the next step, the XSL-FO layout and XML dataset are fed into BI Publisher's FO engine. The FO engine's role is to transform and format the report data into one of many supported output types. In XStore, reports are rendered in PDF format before being converted into an image for viewing, printing, or saving. XStore's reporting framework supports two types of reports, bean reports and query reports. A query-based report is used when the report data needs to be obtained by running a parameterized query against the XStore database. A bean-based report is used when the report data already exists in memory. For example, when printing the contents of a shipping document, the document itself can be used as a report data source. No need to query the database. Having an understanding of XStore's report configuration files is essential for those interested in customizing base reports or adding new custom reports. As mentioned earlier, the XDT data template tells the reporting framework how to retrieve the raw report content from a data source and publish the content in XML format. In query reports using parameterized queries, the XDT data template defines UI prompts to solicit report parameter values from an XStore user. RTF layout templates define the visual appearance of a report. Report bean definitions are spring beans that associate an XDT and an RTF file with a report name. Query configurations are referenced by XDT data templates for query-based reports. Query configurations identify SQL queries to be executed against the XStore database. Auto-run configuration is an XML file defining reports that are scheduled or those that are launched silently in the background during certain operations such as store closing. There are a few other configuration files that may be of interest to XStore report developers. Reports launched through user interaction with menus utilize configuration in a menu config XML. Anyone familiar with customizing XStore understands the important role of the opchain config file. Indeed, for reports, this file is used to load report definitions and controls whether a report is displayed, saved, or printed. The translation and UI properties files are resource files that can be referenced by reports to externalize text and images. The RTF files used in XStore's base reports contain no hard-coded text or embedded images. Now that we know what configuration files are used by XStore's reporting framework, let's see how the configuration file content is used by the framework when a user requests a report from an XStore menu. When the Flash Sales menu item is selected, the opchain in the upper right of this slide is invoked. As you can see, the opchain configuration defines two operations. The first operation is named Load Report Op. Load Report Op has been configured to load a report bean definition named Flash Sales Report. The configuration of the Flash Sales Report bean in the Report Beans configuration file defines an XDT file named Flash Sales XDT. The second operation defined in the opchain configuration will use information from the report's XDT file to prompt the user for input. Prompting is configured in XDT data templates with parameters. Parameters can be system parameters like organization ID and retail location ID, whose values are obtained without user input, or user parameters, whose values result from user input in an XStore screen. While parameter values are useful in parameterized queries run against the XStore database, this is not their only purpose. RTF layout templates can contain logic based on parameter values to affect the visual appearance of a rendered report. Next, we will examine what happens after the user has provided their input and clicked the Run Report button. The Flash Sales Report is an example of a query-based report, which means it obtains its raw report content from the XStore database. All XDT files for query-based reports contain a data source element in which one or more query references are defined. A query reference tells the report framework what database queries to execute in order to retrieve information needed by the report. As mentioned, an XDT file can define multiple query references. The Flash Sales Report relies on several database queries. Let's take a look at one of them. The QSales query reference is used to retrieve sales counts and amounts for a business date, location ID, and organization ID. The XDT's query references key attribute identifies a query named in a report query configuration file. As you can see, there is a direct mapping of the parameters and result fields in the XDT's query reference configuration and that of the query in the report query config. Remember, not all of XStore's reports are query-based reports. Some are bean-based reports. The XDT file for bean-based reports also contains a data source element, but instead of defining a query reference, a data reference is defined. Data references simply reference fields of an in-memory Java object instance. Regardless of whether the report's data is sourced from the results of a SQL query or an in-memory bean, the XStore reporting framework will generate an XML dataset. Of course, XML is a structured document format, so you may be wondering how the XML structure is defined. Well, that brings us to another important role of the XDT file, defining the structure of the XML dataset. It is the data structure configuration in an XDT file that tells the reporting framework how to transform a result set of data into an XML dataset. In this slide, we can see how a data structure element that references the results of a query is configured to define how groupings of XML elements should be created. For each row in the query result set, an XML element named GSale will be generated containing XML elements for the mapped result fields. Keep in mind, a transformation is being defined in this configuration, transforming a query's result set into an XML document. The reporting framework can be configured to write raw result field values into XML, or it can be configured to reformat those values. Notice the use of the decimal and money formatters. If you're feeling a little lost, don't worry. It'll be a little clearer when you see the data structure configuration and the XML dataset together in the next slide. Normally, a generated dataset is simply an in-memory data structure used by the reporting framework at runtime. However, the XML dataset can easily be logged by modifying XStore's Log4j configuration. BI Publisher Desktop has the ability to load an XML dataset, so capturing the XML in the XStore log and placing it in a standalone file is a common procedure when designing reports. Now let's compare the same XDT data structure we saw in the last slide with some generated XML. As you can see, there are multiple GSAIL groups that wrap XML elements for individual result field values. Notice the effect the money formatter had on the sale amount element's value. Contrast the presence of the dollar symbol and a comma with the lack of formatting in the sale amount raw element. Both of these data structure elements are mapped to the same exact result field, the amount field, but the XML contains two different values thanks to a formatter. So let's review what we've learned so far about the XDT report configuration file. We've learned an XDT file is where report parameter prompts displayed before running a report can be defined. We've also seen where XDT files define sources of data that can be the result of an executed SQL query or an in-memory bean. In the last two slides, we saw how the configuration in an XDT file tells the reporting framework how to transform result set data into an XML document. There's just one more capability of an XDT file to discuss: defining labels. In the context of an XDT file, labels refer to text used in reports that appears the same every time the report is run. Examples of labels include table column headings and titles. Since XStore is capable of displaying words in many languages, the labels in XStore's XDT files don't simply contain text. Instead, they reference text contained in language resource bundles. In this slide, starting on the left, we can see how the XDT label named Title Summary is configured with a key. An English language resource bundle maps that key to the text Flash Sales Summary. Notice how the generated XML dataset contains one label element for each label defined in the XDT file. If we look closer at the generated XML, we can see that a label element named Title Summary wraps the text Flash Sales Summary, which is the text used in the heading of the report. You should now have a basic understanding of how an XDT configuration file is used by the reporting framework to generate an XML dataset document. Next, I will explain how the visual appearance of a report is designed. XStore's reporting framework utilizes Oracle BI Publisher technologies for report creation and report rendering. BI Publisher RTF layout templates define the visual appearance of a report. Rich Text Format, or RTF, is a specification used by common word processing applications such as Microsoft Word. To be clear, XStore does not need Oracle BI Publisher Desktop or any additional BI Publisher software installed to generate reports. However, it is strongly recommended that Microsoft Word and BI Publisher Desktop be installed for use in creating and editing the RTF layout templates used by XStore. Oracle BI Publisher Desktop is an extension for Microsoft Word that greatly simplifies the process of designing reports. In addition to all the basic document formatting provided by Microsoft Word, BI Publisher Desktop automates manual steps involved in report designing and provides simplified syntax for logic and formatting. The remainder of this session will be used to demonstrate how XStore's base reports can be customized. Prior to customizing reports, developers should download and install the BI Publisher Desktop software. The installation of BI Publisher Desktop is straightforward. Once installed, Microsoft Word will display a new tab labeled BI Publisher. In addition, a dataset debug logger should be configured so generated datasets can be captured in the XStore log. Now let's walk through three customizations of XStore's base reports: customization of a logo, customization of a query, and customization of an RTF layout template. Out of the box, XStore's base reports display a black Oracle logo in each report's title bar. The logo can be globally replaced with another image through a simple configuration. The first step in overriding the logo is to add a graphics folder under XStore's cust.config directory. Under the newly added graphics folder, add a report folder and place the custom logo's image in that subdirectory. Next, add a UI properties file to the version 1 subdirectory under cust.config. Finally, add an image report logo property to UI properties that points to the custom logo on the class path. A restart of XStore will be needed to see the change take effect. For the second customization, we want to override a base reports query. For example, The Flash Sales Summary Report uses a query that calculates a business day's total sales amount. Suppose we also wanted to report the average sales amount across all workstations for a business day. The first step requires creating a report query config.xml file in which to override a base query with a customized one. The custom query will be placed in version 1 query under cust config. To create a report query config file, extract the base report query config.xml from XStore's config.jar file, and then remove all queries except for the query definition that will contain the overriding SQL query. The highlighted lines in this slide illustrate the needed customization. Note that a result field has been added named Average. In step 3, we will prepare a copy of the Flash Sales Reports XDT file to be customized. As is generally the case with all XStore customizations, we'll leave the base XDT file alone and place a copy of the base file in a cust config folder so it can be customized. The two XML blocks in this slide highlight the only modification we need to make to the Flash Sales XDT file. In step 4, a result field named Average has been added. This configuration enables the new result field added in step 3 to be used in the report. Step 5 shows how the configuration of a new element defining how the average field should appear in generated XML. The only thing left to do is to tell XStore about the existence of the custom XDT file. An easy way to do this is to override the Spring Bean configuration that is the report's report definition bean. In step 5, a file named Custom Report Beans XML is created containing a single report bean definition, the Flash Sales Report, copied from the base report beans XML file. Step 6 is simply editing the data template property of the report definition bean so it references the XDT in the custom folder instead of the base folder. That's all there is to it to customize a query and make the query result accessible to a report. In the final customization, we will override the base Flash Sales RTF by adding a new column for the average sales amount, now available thanks to the previous customization. Just as we did for the report's XDT file in step 1, we'll leave the base RTF file alone and place a copy of the base RTF file in the same cust config folder where we placed the XDT file. For step 2, let's make a final edit to the custom report beans.xml file so that it references the custom RTF instead of the base RTF file. In preparation for the next slide, the custom Flash Sales RTF should be opened up into Microsoft Word. Step 4 requires loading a sample XML file. To create a sample XML file, simply copy the generated dataset out of the XStore log and paste it into its own file. Some of the features available in BI Publisher Desktop only become accessible after loading a sample XML. In step 5, a table column is added to the first table below the graphs. This column will be used to display the new dataset field. The image in step 6 illustrates the use of the BI Publisher Field dialog to insert the Sale Average Dataset field into the table column. While not shown in this slide, a final step would be to add a column heading above the field in the table. This concludes the session on XStore's reporting framework. Not only does the framework offer extensive opportunity for customization, but it provides the ability to design professional reports easily using Oracle BI Publisher Desktop.